The Anti-Defamation League is reporting, as we've heard, a nearly 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents across the U.S. since the beginning of this Israel-Hamas war. And we know that this isn't only happening in the U.S. There have also been examples of this in Canada, too. So what does your organization, what has it been observing?
Yeah, so we were already coming into this year at historically high levels of anti-Semitic incidents reported to us. That's harassment, vandalism, and even assault. There were over 3,700 such incidents in 2022. Since October 7th and the massacre that occurred in Israel, we have seen a significant spike in that activity, many of which frankly reference the conflict itself. This is not uncommon. In other times that we've seen conflict in the Middle East, we've seen how that has animated additional levels of anti-Semitism and hate, not only in the United States, but around the globe. And so unfortunately, people are very angry. The disinformation that they're getting online is incubating more of that anger, and we're seeing how it plays out on the ground.
And part of what you've also said to our producers is that essentially when you're seeing one form of hate targeting one group, often that's reflected against many other groups too.
I mean, that's just something that is true and has always been true. We know that in order to fight anti-Semitism, we have to combat anti-Muslim bigotry and misogyny and racism and other forms of hate. And in order to, address and create friction against those forms of hate, you have to fight anti-Semitism. It's often combined in the minds of those who want to seek to isolate these communities. And at a time where so much of the public discussion is about dividing communities and seeing what is different, what we have to recognize that what we have in common is that we are all targets right now. And hopefully that's something that people can come together around, even though that seems very difficult.
And part of the difficulty and the challenge, of course, is, as you've touched on, the information that is coming into individuals, where people are getting information from, in what echo chambers they're existing, whether or not information is verified. What do you think needs to happen in order to make sure that hate against all of the groups, specifically being targeted following those October 7th attacks, is minimized?
Yeah, I mean, we know that a lot of people are getting their worldviews from their social media feeds. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for people to demand that platforms do more to stop the spread of the types of narratives that we know animate people to action to target these communities. We also need to see law enforcement step up their efforts in terms of protecting communities. I'll be honest with you, the Jewish community is very used to having police cars in front of their institutions at times of conflict or during holidays. Right now, it seems to be this ongoing conflict, and we want to make sure law enforcement not only is prepared about the potential threats that are out there, but that they are literally working with communities to make them feel safer.
Is there something much more visceral about the reaction we're seeing to this particular conflict compared to other phases or incidents of hate that certainly we've seen a rise in over the past few years? And we've reported on that, and I'm sure, of course, you guys have extensively looked at that too.
I mean, I will tell you what we are hearing from so many members of the Jewish community, not only in the United States, but around the world, which is after this incident on October 7th, which has shaken the Jewish community to its core. We were in some ways anticipating a rise in anti-Semitism. What we did not anticipate to this level is how many events have glorified, celebrated, and justified the murder of Jewish children and elderly, et cetera. It's very, very possible. And in fact, it's a requirement to care about the lives of Palestinians, to care about their right to self-determination, but without glorifying the violence against innocent civilians in Israel. For some reason, that nuance has escaped people, and that's what's causing so much concern to a lot of American Jews.
I also want to point to, in this country, it is the start of Holocaust Education Week. That's internationally. Now, here in Canada, one of the provinces, British Columbia, recently announced that it's going to be making Holocaust education mandatory. Ontario is saying that they're going to strengthen the Holocaust education program. We know that earlier this year, there was a school in Ontario that also adopted an anti-Islamophobia strategy. How important are these education programs when it comes to trying, again, to combat this increase in vitriol that groups are facing?
I think those lessons and education is critically important. And frankly, look no further than what we've seen in the last couple of days around the world to attest how important education is. I mean, in Dagestan, you had people literally going into an airport looking for Jews because a flight came in from Tel Aviv. What would have happened had there been any on there? I mean, these are scenes from decades ago, and yet they are current events. And so we need to understand what it's like, not only to put this in context, but I think the lesson of Holocaust education is not to be a bystander in the face of hate, no matter what community is facing that. And I think we all need to embrace that lesson right now, because we will be stronger and be able to get through this together, even though it seems very difficult right now.